In many ways, the freak show was a distinctly Victorian creation. Framed as a commercial spectacle built around bodily oddities, it flourished from the 1840s through 1914. During an era when Victorians were obsessed with classification and rigid categories, so-called freaks disrupted those neat little boxes. From conjoined twins and bearded women to giants who defied proportion, these performers challenged the norms and rewrote the rules of the stage. So join us for today's video as we look at the 15 circus freaks you won't believe actually existed. Number 15. Gabriel Estevão Monjani. Gabriel was born in 1944 in Manjacaze, which is in Mozambique, and grew to become one of the tallest men ever recorded. His extraordinary height was caused by an overactive pituitary gland, leading to gigantism that began early in childhood. By age 17, he already stood nearly 8 feet tall. He later joined a Portuguese circus, where posters exaggerated his height to 8 feet 8 inches to pull bigger crowds. When officially measured in 1987, Gabriel stood just over 8 feet, making him the tallest living man at the time, according to Guinness World Records. Despite his fame, life at that size came with constant exhaustion, joint pain, and public curiosity that never stopped. Sadly, in January 1990, at only 45, Gabriel died after falling down the stairs of his home. His story remains a mix of wonder and weariness, a man who spent his life towering above others, yet never found comfort in the world built for smaller people. Number 14. Harry Jones. Harry, known as Rubber Man, made his living bending the human body into shapes most people didn't believe were possible. Born sometime in the early 1900s, little is known about his childhood. But by adulthood, he could twist his arms completely around, turn his feet backward, and fold himself into impossible positions. He performed with Ripley's Believe It or Not, where audiences came to see what they thought must be an illusion, until he proved it wasn't. Harry didn't rely on costumes or props. His performance was simple, a man pushing the limits of his own joints, smiling through the pain that often came with it. His flexibility wasn't magic. It was a result of extreme double-jointedness and years of practice. In 1955, his luck ran out when he fell during a performance and broke his neck. He died shortly after being taken to the hospital. Harry Jones lived by testing the limits of his body, and in the end, it took everything from him. Number 13. Hugh Bailey. Hugh was born in 1935 with twisted, contorted limbs that bent at angles few could imagine. Sideshow promoters called him the Pretzel Man, Spider Boy, and Crawfish Boy. But behind those names was a man who made a career from what others once pitied. Hugh joined traveling circuses and fairs, moving across the country with a body that refused the ordinary. On stage, he could crawl, twist, and balance himself with a control that seemed almost choreographed. His movements weren't desperate. They were deliberate. In time, he appeared in the cult film The Mutations, where his quiet presence said more than the dialogue ever could. After that, he seemed to fade from public record, with some saying he retired to live privately. What remains clear is his resilience. Hugh Bailey didn't fit the world's frame, so he built his own. Every motion he made, however weirdly strange, carried a sense of grace that couldn't be faked or forgotten. Number 12. Irma Lustau. Irma Lustau was a French performer whose striking appearance earned her the stage names Die Panther Dame, meaning the Panther Woman, and Leopard-Spotted Lady. She wasn't covered in tattoos or makeup. The pattern was natural. Her body was marked with dark spots that stood out sharply against her fair skin, and a thick ring of hair encircled her head like a crown. Irma's look fascinated European audiences in the early 20th century, blending elegance with mystery. Unlike many who were mocked for their differences, she leaned into her image and built a career from it. Her confidence turned what could have been humiliation into power. Irma wasn't defined by the stares. She controlled them. Each performance was less about shock and more about self-possession. She moved with grace, aware of her uniqueness, but never apologetic for it. Though little is known about her later life, Irma Lustow remains remembered as a performer who carried her strangeness with style, dignity, and quiet defiance. Number 11. Talon Crawford. Talon was born in 1975 and grew up in a world that wasn't always kind to differences. Standing 3.5 feet tall with traits that gave him an oddly bat-like appearance, he was nicknamed Bat Boy and sometimes called the Outcast. Instead of hiding from it, Talon leaned into the title and began performing in modern-day sideshows, embracing the same tradition that had once defined the freak show era. He toured for years, balancing humor, showmanship, and quiet dignity, proving that being stared at didn't mean being powerless. By 2005, he stepped away from the business. He married Roxy, had a daughter, and settled down in Washington. That family life gave him something the stage never could: peace. Today, Talon lives privately, remembered by fans as one of the last true living links to the classic sideshow world. He's not performing anymore, but the life he built beyond the curtain speaks louder than the spotlight ever did. Number 10. CeeLo, the Seal Boy. Stanislaus Barnum was born in Pittsburgh on November 24, 1901. His arms were short, ending in flipper-like stubs due to phocomelia, a condition caused by a genetic defect, not drugs or outside exposure. Decades before the thalidomide scandal, CeeLo was already living proof of how the body could grow in unexpected ways. He was discovered selling newspapers, then made his way into the sideshow world, performing in nearly every major dime museum in the country. His act didn't rely on sympathy. It was built on skill, completing everyday tasks with tools he adapted for himself. CeeLo was charming, self-reliant, and well-respected by peers. He traveled with Ward Hall and even befriended a chimpanzee that would growl at hecklers on his behalf. By the 70s, he helped challenge Florida's ban on disabled performers. He retired in 1976 after a long, dignified career and passed away in 1980. CeeLo wasn't defined by his condition. He shaped it into something that belonged only to him. All right, now, let's head over to Number 9. Israel Bressner. Israel Bressner, known on the circuit as Slim the Shadow, stood 7 feet tall and weighed just 90 pounds. Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, he made a name for himself as the skinniest man alive. For 16 years straight, his weight never changed. He worked with Ringling Brothers, where his presence alone was enough to draw attention. There were no flashy stunts, just a frame that looked impossible. Tall as a doorway, thin as a skeleton, Israel seemed to move like smoke. The name Slim the Shadow wasn't just for show, it fit him in every sense. People would stare in disbelief, wondering how a man could live inside a body like that. But Israel wasn't frail. He held his own. He took what nature gave him and found a way to turn it into work. His image still shows up in old photos and flyers, a long, quiet silhouette that made people pause, and then kept them wondering long after he left the stage. Number 8. Mungo Lark. Well, this one is insane. Mungo didn't grow up in a tribe, but that didn't stop the promoters from making one up. Billed as the wild spotted boy, he had vitiligo, a condition that causes patches of skin to lose pigment. His entire body was marked by it, giving him a spotted look that caught attention wherever he went. The story sold to audiences was more fiction than fact, that he came from a mysterious group of spotted Africans hidden deep in the jungle. It was nonsense, of course, but in sideshow culture, truth often came second to spectacle. Mungo played the part he was given, but underneath the marketing was a man living with a visible condition in a time when difference meant display. He wasn't covered in paint. He didn't need makeup. His skin told its own story, even if the people around him tried to rewrite it. Mungo Lark was never the wild boy they claimed, but he was real, and that was more than enough. Number 7. Fred Walters. Fred, aka the Blue Man, was born in England in 1855 and served as a captain in the British Army before his life took a surreal turn. He suffered from argyria, a condition caused by ingesting too much silver, which slowly turned his skin a bluish gray. It began unintentionally. Medical treatments of the time often included silver-based compounds. But once he realized people were paying to see his strange coloring, Walters leaned in. He began taking more of the silver pills, not for health, but for income. The more vibrant the blue, the more profitable the act. He joined Ringling Brothers and became a featured attraction. Over time, the condition affected not just his skin, but his organs. His heart, liver, and even his bones were reportedly tinted blue. He died in 1923, weakened by the very thing that gave him a career. Fred had a wife and a son named Granville, but in sideshow history, he's remembered as the man who swallowed silver and became a myth. Number 6. The Man with Two Faces. Sam Alexander didn't start out as a sideshow act. He was a theater man with dreams of performance until a gasoline accident left the lower half of his face severely burned. Multiple surgeries couldn't restore what he lost, and the idea of rebuilding his face was estimated to take more than a decade. Sam withdrew from public life, struggling with both physical pain and emotional isolation. Eventually, a young surgeon created a lifelike mask that allowed him to move through the world again. Instead of hiding from attention, Sam found a new kind of stage. He joined major circus outfits and developed a powerful routine, sharing his story, then removing the mask at the end. It wasn't just an act, it was a reckoning. Sam later started his own sideshow company and became a quiet legend in that world. He wore the mask until the end, passed away in 1997, and was deeply respected. His performance was all about shock. Number 5. Martin Lorello. Martin didn't rely on stage tricks or costume gimmicks. His act came down to one unsettling move. He could twist his head around, facing backward without shifting his shoulders. Born with a rare spinal condition and trained through years of slow, careful stretching, Lorello learned to dislocate specific vertebrae to achieve the turn. The effect was eerie. People in the audience often looked away before they looked again, trying to figure out if it was real. It was. Lorello didn't juggle or dance or sing. He just turned his head and let people sit with what they saw. His control over the motion was so complete that he could do it casually, even while smoking a cigarette. Though he never became a household name, Lorello worked steadily for years on the theater and sideshow circuit. He didn't need a complicated routine. His act was brief, bizarre, and unforgettable. One man, one body, one impossible movement that never got old. Number 4. Captain Constantinus. He wasn't the first tattooed performer in America, but he was the most extensively covered of his time. Born in 1836, he filled his body with blue and red Burmese-style tattoos, from his scalp to the tips of his fingers, even covering his eyelids and genitals. Only the soles of his feet remained untouched. To add mystique, he claimed he'd been kidnapped and forcibly tattooed in Burma, though that story was almost certainly fiction. The truth didn't matter much in the world of traveling shows. The tattoos were real, and the detail was so intricate that scientists at the University of Vienna studied him. He toured with P.T. Barnum and the great Farini, earned huge paychecks, and even sold autobiographies filled with half-truths. Despite the lies, his image stood on its own. When he died, it was rumored that he left money to fellow performers and a Greek church in London. His body may have been inked, but the business was written in gold. Number 3. Admiral Dot. Back in 1868, just after Barnum's American Museum burned down for the final time, most people assumed the showman was done. But while visiting San Francisco, Barnum heard about Leopold S. Kahn, who was a little person said to be even smaller than Tom Thumb. Intrigued, Barnum tracked him down, gave him the name Admiral Dot, and placed him on display in his hotel lobby. It wasn't long before Dot became a fixture in Barnum's Grand Traveling Museum, Menagerie, Caravan, and Circus. Over the years, he performed with the American Lilliputian Company and later joined the rival camp of Adam Forepaugh. In 1892, he married Lottie Swartwood, also a little person, and the two settled in White Plains, New York, where Dot opened a modest inn called the Admiral Dot Hotel. Locals affectionately called it Hotel Pee-wee. In 1918, both he and his daughter died during the influenza pandemic. Though small in stature, Admiral Dot played a lasting role in circus history, remembered far beyond his height. Number 2. Clémentine Delay. Clémentine from France began growing visible facial hair as a teenager. At first, she tried to hide it, but after marrying a local baker and opening a cafe, she made a bold move. In 1900, when a traveling carnival came through town, Clémentine claimed she could grow a better beard than the bearded lady on display, and she did. The couple leaned into it, renaming their shop Le Café de la Femme à Barbe and selling postcards of Clémentine behind the counter, beard and all. She toured Europe, performing in cabarets and museums, but turned down offers to appear in the U.S. In 1934, she published her memoirs, a rare move for a woman in that line of work. She didn't perform out of desperation. She built her own brand. Clémentine wasn't simply a curiosity. She took ownership of her image, her body, and her voice. She's still remembered as one of France's most confident and clever showwomen. All right, let's end this with Number 1. The 48-pound man. Martin P. Avery didn't belong to the stage, but his body still made him a spectacle, whether he wanted it or not. Born in 1836, he grew up to be 5 feet, 3 inches tall, and never weighed more than 48 pounds. He suffered from chronic dyspepsia, a painful condition that made eating difficult and digestion unreliable. Despite his frailty, Martin lived on his own, married, and tried to build a regular life. He didn't chase attention, but people talked anyway. In a time when difference was often boxed up and sold under a tent, Martin chose to stay out of it. He wasn't a character. He wasn't an exhibit. He was just a man trying to live inside a body that never gave him a break. In 1882, he passed away from complications related to his illness. His grave is in Moravian Cemetery. No spotlight, no banner, no stage. Just a quiet place for a quiet man who never stopped trying. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content like this. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you soon.